well into that point of the summer where we're looking at what the team's going to be as opposed to what it is or what it's been. So I'm a lot less interested in Yasmani Grandal hitting a walk-off home run than I am in his battery mate. Good morning to you. Good Monday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Pirates. It comes your way bright and early every weekday if you're into hockey and or football. I also offer daily shots of Penguins and Steelers in the same place that you found this. Pirates 4, Reds 3 because of that Grandal 2-run shot. Fun stuff. I'm not diminishing it or whatever. It's just, respectfully, a 36-year-old catcher isn't going to be much of a variable moving forward, to say the least, whereas Luis Ortiz put up 6 more zeros, struck out 5, walked 1, hit a couple batters, was just really good. Really, really good again. And in what might be the most under-discussed, understated facet of this entire season for the Pirates, from a positive perspective anyway, Luis now has a 3.36 ERA and a 1.12 whip. That's good. And if you throw into that mix that for the first couple months of the season, management couldn't seem to figure out if he was a starter or a reliever or a mop-up man or what, and then he'd occasionally get a start, but then go back out to the pen, even if he did well. I've shared with you guys several times in recent weeks about what a terrific job I think Luis has done of keeping his chin up, keeping focused on being a starter, but, without complaining about it. And even on those couple of occasions where he's gotten knocked around a little bit, he's bounced right back. And I'm talking about very, very bad first inning, really strong subsequent 5 innings, stuff like that. And I got to tell you, this is someone you want on your side, meaning in your rotation. I'm not talking about August and September when the season's shot. I'm talking about when it counts. Look, next 3 nights at PNC Park are going to be a lot of fun for a lot of people, I'm sure, because you've got Mitch Keller. They haven't announced it yet, but Jared Jones is going to pitch, coming back from his injury Tuesday night. Paul Skeens has the finale on Wednesday. And this was the stuff everybody's dreams have been made of, going back to May. These 3 guys. And every once in a while, a Bailey Falter would kind of poke his head into that scenario. There are also those who will look ahead to Bubba Chandler or someone else from the system, or they'll even remember that Johan Oviedo still exists, and that when he returns next season, he has a chance to be part of that rotation, having pitched really well before he was hurt. But all through that, there's Luis, blessed with that big-bodied starting pitcher's classic frame that you like to see, looking like someone who could get you 32 starts, 200 innings without even breaking a sweat, pumping both his 4-seamer and his 2-seamer into the zone at 98 miles an hour and getting people out. The only time he's struggled, in fact, really, and I know this is like saying if it wasn't for those couple of interceptions, Neil O'Donnell would have had a really nice Super Bowl. But the one thing that you've seen from Ortiz when he struggles is that he'll just routinely lose his command, but then he'll also routinely get it right back. He doesn't fall off the truck and stay off the truck. And that's a really strong trait for someone that you got to lean on all summer. Listen, what I'm getting at here is that he needs to be classified as a starting pitcher and left alone. And once again, I'm not referring to these final few meaningless games. He's not new here. The Pirates need to go into Bradenton next spring, regardless of who the management team is. And when they count their starting pitchers, they need to count 4, not 3. That's not to say Luis is in the category with the other 3. It's also not to say that he couldn't be, meaning I don't want to put a ceiling over his head. But this way, if you look at your depth chart in the rotation, your solid guys, your ones that you really, really expect to emerge from late March with a real role on this roster, He's one of them. And then from there, if you want to get into making moves that maybe bolster the offense, if that requires a trade, although it sure would be nice to do some of that through free agency this winter as well, he could also be that for you. But not if you continue to devalue him by having him work occasionally out of the pen. He's a starting pitcher. Let him be a starting pitcher. Let him continue to show you that he's a starting pitcher. When we come back, J1Q. This portion of Daily Shot of Pirates is brought to you by our friends at North Shore Tavern. That's directly across Federal Street from PNC Park. It's home of Steak on a Stone, an eating experience, underscoring the word experience. The steak is brought to you partially cooked on an 800-degree stone, and you do the rest. It's a ton of fun, it's a great meal, and it's a baseball atmosphere like no other in Pittsburgh. North Shore Tavern, right across Federal Street from PNC Park. Today's J1Q comes from Chris, who says, DK, is it me or is the Pirates fan base just so much harder on Latin players than North American players? Going back to Roberto Clemente's earlier years, as outlined in his biography, and more recently by Starling Marte and Gregory Polanco, and now O'Neal Cruz. These guys came out of abject poverty, are happy to be here. That's why they're smiling. Yes, they're enormously talented, and yes, like all of us, they make mistakes, just not necessarily on television. They use interpreters to help ensure that they're not misunderstood. Why all the vitriol? Well, Chris, I'm always careful not to paint with too broad a brush in terms of casting any opinion. There's always someone who feels differently from the remainder of the group. So if I were to attempt to cast the Pirates fan base as feeling a certain way, or Pittsburgh sports fans as feeling a certain way, it'd be a ludicrous exercise on my part. We're all different. We all have different backgrounds, we all have different upbringings, and we all have different mindsets, even when we live in the same place, or for that matter, love that place. I've made my feelings known about some of the criticism of Cruz that I haven't liked, but every time I've done that, I've been careful to stress that that doesn't mean he is above or outside criticism. That's crazy. The only thing that you'd reasonably ask, and I know for a fact it's the only thing that they, meaning Latin American players that I've talked to, would reasonably ask, is that it's fair, is that it's the same for everybody. So if you look at Cruz getting picked off yesterday, this after they had a replay erase a pickoff just before that, when he got a second lease on life and he got picked off anyway, that's not a good baseball play. That's not good baseball sense. That doesn't make him dumb. That doesn't make him dumb because he's Latin American. It's a bad baseball play, and it should be called out as such. But you know what? If that play happens to Brian Reynolds, or Brian Reynolds throws to the wrong bag, or Brian Reynolds tries to swing out of his shoes in a certain situation at the plate, and I'm not suggesting that B-Ray does any of those things, but if he did, you just apply the same standard. This isn't all that complicated. This isn't at all unlike, what life should be like. I'm of the opinion, and it is an opinion, that everyone should be treated equally, regardless of race, ethnic background, gender, you name it. That's not exactly a revolutionary opinion, but it's the one that I happen to hold. I'm sure that there are people who don't hold that. I'm going to share a little story with you today, Chris. When I was flying to Serbia a couple of months ago, I flew from Pittsburgh to London on British Airways. We have a nonstop now, where I was to change planes and board Air Serbia the rest of the way to Belgrade. When I got there, I found out that we were taking off from a certain portion of a certain terminal for what they referred to as red-listed countries, or red-listed airlines, or something like that. And when I went to that terminal, you went from this super spectacular, palatial, brand new, modern structure to this facility where we were like being herded around like cattle and everything was crumbling and falling apart. And there was this paper sign that said Air Serbia line here. And I thought, wait a second, what are you doing here? Are you treating us differently because we're like some lesser species or something? Because of, political or recent war history or whatever? Really? And I'm not going to make myself sound like some kind of victim or whatever here. I'm sharing the tiniest possible example here of how that can feel. Like I felt like I was in an airport with a bunch of English snobs who were looking to cast me off in some sort of special line. With these guys, these Latin American players, what they're going through in baseball and what they've gone through since the Clemente days. And by the way, this is reason 1 billion why number 21 should be retired across the sport, because he was to these athletes and to these people everything that Jackie Robinson was to the African American population. That's been going on forever, and it's more muted and more understated now than before. But I'm going to make that other point again, because sometimes people hear this and everything is just literally one extreme or the other to them. Criticize Cruz. Go nuts. Do it. He's a baseball player. He's a major leaguer. He's out there. You're paying for the tickets. Nobody's saying you can't do that. Just do it for the right reason and do it with everybody. I appreciate the question, Chris. I appreciate the opportunity to go over this again. And I appreciate everybody who listens to Daily Shot of Pirates. We'll do another one of these tomorrow.